Public Affairs very much thanks Residco, our sole corporate underwriter, for helping to make the production of this show possible.
We're taxed too much.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons people are leaving. And we're taxed too much because our liabilities are too high. So if I bring the liabilities down to a more reasonable level, you can also lower the tax cost. And if you lower the tax cost, the whole goal ultimately is to make Illinois a great place for someone to move. Make Illinois a great place for people to live. Have the government be focused on helping people achieve their dreams instead of being there just to raise money to pay pensions for government workers. Okay. It is such a dreary belief they have. Their vision of government in the state is kind of this weird, dreary, shakedown scheme where I'm supposed to pay people not to work starting in the mid-50s at rates that are well in excess of the average income of the typical working Illinoisan. So he set up a whole series of arbitrary rules where the government was making decisions about who could do what. What we should have done from the outset is focus on the most vulnerable. And focus, put a bubble around the folks that needed the protection the most. And that's the mistake they're making, and they're still making this. Instead, we stoked fear. And I think it was unfortunate that fear has become the biggest problem we have today. People are spun up and terrified by this. And so there's every new news story about variants and stuff like that. And instead, people have to step back and recognize that risk is an element of life. And what we need to do is manage the risk. Focus on the people who are most vulnerable. And we're seeing the mistake today in terms of the vaccine rollout. Instead of focusing on giving the vaccines to the people that are most likely to get really sick and potentially die, the governor's spreading it out among a bunch of different groups that he's designating as being important for one reason or another. When the reality, if you just focus on protecting those who need help, you would behave in a different way. And you don't need to make this political. Follow the data. They're all consequences of a mindset in the government, which is the government is going to tell you what to do. They're going to give you guidance. They want to make you better. They want to tell you what to do. Instead of using government as a way to protect people who need help and otherwise providing information and ensuring the liberty of other people so they can decide what to do themselves. Because guess what? The genius of America is the genius of individual people making decisions on their own based on information that they find.
So I hope you liked our first show with Richard Porter, where he was thinking about running for governor in March of 2022 in the Republican primary, and we covered a fair amount of ground, but we realized we hadn't covered all of it for this time, and so we're going to give you some more in part 2. I hope you like that. As I'll remind you at the end of that show, remember, I can't say this enough. If you watch them on cable, that's great. We'd love to have everybody watching in Chicago and Rockford and Aurora and the Chicago metro suburbs and around the state of Illinois on the Illinois Channel in Springfield and everywhere. But it will also go to youtube.com/IllinoisChannelTV. You got an opportunity there to just say, hey, if you liked it, tell us. If you didn't, just tell us that. If you want to comment, give us your comment. And just keep coming back, keep watching the show, and keep involved. This is an interactive process. So, and with that, we're going to get started on part 2 of our interview with Richard Porter, possible candidate for governor of the state of Illinois.
If you lower the cost structure, that's even if you cut back on the revenue because you've cut back on property taxes, but you also lowered the costs that the schools are paying, it might actually net out benefiting the school system. In Wisconsin, we saw that.
But how do you lower the costs?
By allowing people to modify the pensions.
Oh, so the salary, including pensions, is going down because the salary, the personnel costs are the large part of those costs.
And also,
so by cutting those pension costs, you're saying you can cut the local unit costs and their property taxes without sacrificing quality of education.
Right. That triggers a restructuring all up and down the system to refocus away from providing funding for pensions and instead focus on providing services to people. I mean, that's the real goal here, is to bring the government back and give it back to the people.
So the other major issue, which we try to have, we'll have less time, but you can do it. I know Richard Porter, you can cover it. You're, what the heck, you're K&E partner. So what did we do wrong with COVID? I'm assuming you think we did some things wrong. In March of 2020, the Governor Pritzker, made some decisions about the economy, about the health, and so forth. What did he do wrong?
I think he set up a model that was just wrong-headed. The idea that some jobs are essential and other jobs are not essential. Every job is essential to the person that has that job. Every business is essential to people that are in that business and their customers. So that whole kind of construct that he had of essential businesses will stay in, everybody else is supposed to go and shut down their doors was wrong-headed. It didn't respect that these businesses are, they're essential to everybody. And the idea, I mean, there's so many, ridiculous examples of this, that marijuana dispensaries, which were illegal 2 years ago, suddenly went from being illegal to being essential in 2 years, is madness. All right? That doesn't make any sense. So he set up a whole series of arbitrary rules where the government was making decisions about who could do what. What we should have done from the outset is focus on the most vulnerable. And focus, put a bubble around the folks that needed the protection the most. And that's the mistake they're making, and they're still making this mistake.
What did we know then? Did we have data in March of 2020 that told us who the most vulnerable are in COVID?
No, so look, I think
Did we?
legitimately,
Maybe we
had that by
April.
April.
Did we have that from Italy?
We had that from Italy, we had it from China.
What
We
did
saw
what
was
did those data tell us?
that the older you were and the more other problems you had, the more likely you were to have a bad outcome with COVID. You're more likely to be hospitalized, and you're more likely to die if you're older and you had other issues.
Other issues meaning comorbidities.
Other pulmonary issues, other
Prior
issues in your
existing
lungs,
conditions.
prior existing
Pulmonary,
conditions.
what else?
Breathing issues,
Okay.
emphysema, diabetes, asthma.
So if you have that combination, you're
Yeah.
older and you have that, you're in real trouble.
You're very vulnerable.
How old do you have to be to be in that category?
Well, the data breaks at 70 and above. It's much more dangerous. I think it's when you see the graph, this has not been a dangerous
Like what
disease so
percentage,
young.
any idea, like what percentage of people who die in Illinois now we're looking
Oh, I think it's
back?
half. I think it's half are people that are in nursing homes and over.
Half
80.
are in nursing homes?
Yeah.
And what percentage are over, say, 60?
Oh, I think it's whatever it is,
90 or
85,
something?
90%, something like that. Yeah.
So 90% of the people are right there.
Right.
So you're saying other people who are going to work who are 20 to 50, pretty much safe.
Right. I had COVID, and it really
We don't
was
need
not-
to
yeah.
shut down the economy.
Right. No. The whole
Really?
point is
You don't have to shut it down.
instead we stoked fear, and I think it was unfortunate that fear has become the biggest problem we have today. People are spun up and terrified by this, and so there's every new news story about variants and stuff like that, and instead people have to step back and recognize that risk is an element of life, and what we need to do is manage the risk. Focus on the people who are most vulnerable. And we're seeing the mistake today in terms of the vaccine rollout. Instead of focusing on giving the vaccines to the people that are most likely to get really sick and potentially die, the governor's spreading it out among a bunch of different groups that he's designating as being important for one reason or another. When the reality, if you just focus on protecting those who need help, you would behave in a different way. And you don't need to make this political. Follow the data.
So the people in nursing homes should get vaccinated first?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the people who
People
are
who
more
are
likely
over
to die.
75, over
Right.
65 with these prior conditions,
Correct.
those should have been first.
Yes.
Instead, what did he do?
Well, he did the healthcare workers, but all healthcare workers.
Yeah, why?
So including
Why
a
would he do that?
25-year-old
Why would he do
orderly. Again, it's sort of arbitrary categorization because those are important jobs. We need people to be healthy to provide the healthcare services. It's very important. We love those frontline workers. But if you're young and healthy and you're doing this, you're just not that much at risk of having a bad outcome. Instead, focus on the people they're trying to help. Focus on the people they're trying to help, and you have to help fewer of them. By eliminating the problem on that end, the people are being protected who are providing the services, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, we want to have less bad outcomes.
So people could have continued to work, the GDP for Illinois would be higher, we wouldn't
Sure.
need these massive relief programs
We looked at what other
from the
states
federal
did.
government,
And
even
we
from the
have
state.
50 laboratories of, the
Like
states.
what's your best example?
Well, Florida, I think North Dakota. They had a much less restrictive approach, and they took an approach focused on risk mitigation instead of sort of arbitrarily deciding who gets to do what. I mean, look at these outdoor tents. This is nutty. An indoor room with ventilation, right? And you're not too, as long as you're not coming too close, you're just not going to get sick.
Right.
You put everybody in a tent, there's less ventilation. The ceiling is lower. You have those heaters next to you.
It's worse.
It's worse. Who would think that was a good idea?
And is Illinois saying, could the governor say, oh, but I got a much better outcome in terms of our deaths per capita than Florida?
No, we can't say that.
You can't say that.
No.
So it's worse everywhere. It's worse in health, worse in the economy, lives lost because people become alcoholics when they get pent up. You know, they are less wholesome in their outlook.
You know,
they're suicidal.
Those
are health consequences of locking it down, right?
But they're all consequences of a mindset in the government, which is the government is going to tell you what to do. They're going to give you guidance. They want to make you better. They want to tell you what to do. Instead of using government as a way to protect people who need help and otherwise providing information and ensuring the liberty of other people so they can decide what to do themselves. Because guess what? The genius of America is the genius of individual people making decisions on their own based on information that they find.
What about schools? What did the governor do about the schools across Illinois?
Well,
public schools, K through 12.
They never should have been closed, and we saw that.
Who closed them? Did the governor close them?
But also the unions closed them.
Unions
Closed them.
So the governor didn't stop the unions. Could he have stopped them?
Well, I think he could have, but again, this is part of
them,
his.
at least?
Then he's turning on his base. You know, this is the source of his field work.
The unions say it's unsafe. We had to do it unsafe for the teachers, unsafe for the kids.
Well, my kids we moved our kids to Catholic school 2 years ago, and it turned out to be a really good move. The Catholic schools are open, and the Catholics, they're meeting in person. My son went back to school today.
So what did the data show us about schools for the state
open? The kids
open?
don't get sick. The kids aren't getting sick.
Really, they're not. So like out of, the numbers, out of the 17,000, 18,000 who've died in Illinois from COVID, how many are under 20?
Is it one?
I think it's 8.
Is it 8?
Eight.
Okay.
I think Wirepoint says that.
Okay. I believe
that was
Mark
as of a
Ted.
few weeks ago. Maybe I haven't updated.
Yeah.
So 8 people under 20, and then but the union teachers, you say, well, but the teachers could get sick. The teachers could die.
Well, dentists.
What's your answer to that?
Dentists manage to get in there in your mouth.
Yeah.
And they're not getting sick, right? I mean, if you think about a business that would be dangerous, being a dentist strikes me as one of the most dangerous, jobs you could have. But they're not dying. And the reality is teachers tend to be younger because of the sweet deal that they're offered. They tend to retire in the mid-50s and move on.
And the danger point is when they're over 60.
When they're over 60. And so you could create separation for the teachers. They could be wearing they could wear a shield in addition to, so there are mitigation factors that could be done. For the teachers that have another comorbidity, you could work around that on an individual basis.
So if you were governor tomorrow, January 20.
Yeah. Focus on risk mitigation.
What would you'd open up the schools? Send them all back?
I'd open everything
up. Open up the employment, everything restaurants?
But what I would do is focus on nursing homes, protecting people in nursing homes, and communicating and protecting and encouraging people who are older, tend to be retired, to stay home and protect themselves. And they provide services to them to make sure that they can stay, mental health services and other sorts, to focus it all on the people that are vulnerable instead of on sort of grand plans of who's important and who isn't. Medical marijuana gets to stay in place, but whatever.
So even though you were educated at a good college, Middlebury, educated at a good law school, University of Chicago Law School, learned a lot of this there, learned a lot of economics, worked at Lexicon, but you told me before the show you worked at IBM.
Yeah.
In between college and law school.
Yeah.
You learned something about systems, about engineering,
right, and
about risk, probabilities. I mean,
sure,
in other words, is that all come together? If you want to be governor, you have to bring. It helps if you have these knowledges to bring together.
Well, this is part of my motivation.
Look, managing risk.
Managing risk is a lot of what you need to do as a government. I mean, that's what we're there to help. Protecting the citizenry is part of what you should be doing. It's not what the focus of the government is today. But I do think that I'm uniquely qualified to be governor at a time when Illinois has to go through a restructuring. Because I understand government, I understand how it works. And a lot of what my skill set is trying to design plumbing systems, if you will, legal systems that work. I've gone through a number of restructurings of commercial enterprises. I know what has to happen. I know the constitutional law. I know the state law. I know how you get this done. I know that there's 4 different ways you can do this. The reality is this problem is a creation of our human imagination. We came up with this problem. We created this problem. Any problem human beings create, human beings can solve. But we see no energy, no creativity, no focus on solving the problem of Illinois, of bringing Illinois back to the people. And that's what we're missing. It's a darn shame. You know, J.B. Pritzker's a smart guy. I don't know him well, but I know him well enough to know he's a decent man. But he's unfortunately not focused on what makes Illinois a better place for the typical family to live in. If I'm coming out of law school today, am I choosing Illinois or am I choosing Tennessee or Texas? Right? And you got to sell to people. You want to make your state a place where people want to live. It's just so basic. Make life better. Don't make it worse. Make it better. A government that makes life worse is a government that should be replaced.
So if you had the time, we don't, but if you had the time, you would take that same approach that you've learned and mastered over the years, working for IBM, going to law school at the University of Chicago, working at Lexicon, getting to know Judge Posner, who is Mr. Law and Economics, was the sort of the original person on that, and now developed. So you've in systems and real people, because you've balanced that, you've tempered. This is not theory. I mean, you were thrown into Bush 41, and you were thrown into the campaign, and then domestic policy, heading the Domestic Policy Council at 29.
Right.
So
I was the rank of a 3-star general when I was 30. It's kind of funny.
So you would then go to education, and we don't have time. Maybe you'll come back and tell us. Does school choice cure a lot of the problems?
100%.
Medicaid. We've just had bills that are trying to abolish managed care. Is that right? Criminal justice. Did we make people safer?
No, that should be the test.
Did we make them safer? That should be the test.
At the end of the day, the test for whether government works or not is, did you make life better for the people of the state or not? And if you're not making it better, you're doing the wrong thing. You know, and you got to step back, and our whole government has to be rethought from this point of view of how do we make life better in Illinois.
So, somebody might say, I heard Jeannie Ives say this just the other day, competence. Republicans should be running on competence, because if COVID wasn't handled competently in the state level, that should be an issue, not because anybody's out to get the governor. That's how you make things work. You learn from your mistakes, right? I mean, you have a democracy, you have a legislature, you have 3 branches of government.
Right.
We should be discussing all these things.
Right.
And we'd love to have the governor on, and there's another side, and hear what he has to say about it. That's how we get better.
Right.
Not by saying, well, there's only one viewpoint that we'll tolerate.
No, but I think the viewpoint that people will focus on is, how do we make things better for the people who aren't in the room?
Yeah.
Right? How do we make better for the people who are deciding where to live? For the young guy coming out of college, young woman, the young family, do we want to make the state better for them? Because that's our goal. And I think any other goal is not a goal that respects the republic nature of what we're supposed to be doing here. It's supposed to be government of, by, and for the people. And we're not doing that in Illinois.
So you should be, if you're running for governor, you should be serving the people.
Correct. Yeah.
You're not running this and using city employees, city government employees of Chicago, state government employees of Illinois. You're not using it, if you're the governor, so you can build an empire, as they did in ancient days.
Right.
And taxing for that, you're taxing the minimal amount to provide the services that people require for public goods.
To help them pursue their dreams.
It's a revolutionary idea.
It was a revolutionary
Because
idea.
those red light cameras, you've said, that's all about generating revenue, not safety.
It's abusing people who are low income. I mean, that's the crazy thing about it.
It's another predatory tactic by the government.
It's a predatory tactic, focusing on taking from the people for the benefit of the government. We got it backwards.
So this, and not being partisan, but if I were looking at this objectively and saying, if I'm a Republican and I got like such super minorities in the State House and the State Senate, and I haven't held the governor's chair for now 2 years, this is like a major opportunity for you. That is, somebody made some mistakes, you think you could have done better, can you sell that case? More importantly, you think you could do better in the future. You think you could turn it around so people are coming to Illinois rather than leaving.
Yeah, that ought to be the goal.
So
how do you make Illinois grow?
Whoever runs for governor for the Republican Party, and this is good, that you'll have a Democrat who will defending a point of view. You'll have a Republican. As long as you have that clash of ideas, ultimately, is that what you learned? That's how democracy is supposed to work?
Yeah, and I think the other challenge is to take people who agree with you and give them a reason to vote for you. one of the things I see in Illinois today, and I've been doing some polling to see where people are, is it a majority or a near majority of Illinoisans consider themselves conservative, and like 15% less consider themselves liberal. So you have a lot of people, and yet the Democratic Party is 17% higher in party affiliation. So you have a belief system which is out of whack from the partisan system. What we need to do is give people who agree with us a reason and permission and the ability to vote for us, right? We have to present them a face and an alternative that works for them so they'll actually vote to support the ideas they already believe in. I mean, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be reflecting ideas of the people. I think our ideas are there. That's why the governor lost that tax fight. 55% of the people voted against it because they saw that Illinois was in a spiral, and the only way to break out of the spiral is to stop the tax and tax and tax. So we've got to cut taxes, and if we cut taxes, we've got to cut liabilities. And that's the only way we're going to make Illinois a better place for people to live.
Okay, so so this is the end. That's all we have time for our second part two of the Richard Porter interviews when you're thinking about running for governor. So you'll want to come back, I hope, this summer or perhaps before.
Jeff, you know I love to talk, so.
And you'll tell us what you've decided. And either way, your interest will not wane.
No.
You will be either interested because you're running for governor, or you're interested because you've decided somebody else is better to do this.
Yeah.
And you want to see the best for Illinois because, gosh, you've lived here, what, how many years?
Almost 30 years.
30
yeah.
years. You've got a family, you've got 4 kids,
Yep.
you have a spouse,
Yep.
wife, however the proper term is.
Yes,
You're in love. That's part of the
It's all a
show.
beautiful thing, yeah.
Okay. Marriage is great.
Uh-huh.
Families are great.
All great.
Okay. And all you want to do is sort of spend some time giving back and making sure these opportunities that you've had exist for everybody, including those, we did a show talking about kids, not kids, young adult men, black often, not always,
Right.
20 to 24, not working,
Yeah.
and not in school. And they want to be. They want to be mentored. They really do. It would be wonderful if you could put together a group so you'd have these kids mentored, I say kids, they're young men, and they could get jobs and they don't have to do the drug trade.
Yeah. No,
That would be a
100%.
challenge for you. You'd love to solve that.
Yeah, in part, look, the thing
You
that's
could do that
motivating me on
possibly,
this
right? Yeah.
is I'm looking around, I see a problem, I'm not seeing people even talking about it in a creative way, and I just think I really should do this. The easier thing for me to do would be move to Florida, kick back and enjoy some pina coladas on the beach, right?
You know a few people who've done that.
I know some people who've done that, right?
Maybe some of your
there's sort of a
partners from
trend.
Kirkland and Ellis. Okay.
But
Yeah.
you know, instead I feel like I've pulled over and I see an accident, and I just feel like it's, you know, we ought to help. This is wrong, what's happened here. And what's going on is wrong. It's wrong what we do to the kids in Chicago. It's wrong that we're shutting down businesses and putting people out of work. You know, and so it just, you reach a certain age, and it's just, I feel like it's incumbent on us to try to do what we can to leave the state in a better place for our children. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. And I can bring a skill set to that challenge that I don't see elsewhere at this point. And, you know, there's a lot of talented people. I love all the other folks that are talking about running. They're all terrific guys. So I think any Republican would be better than JB. So we'll see how things shake out this spring.
Okay, so you folks remember what I told you at the beginning of the part 1 of the first show. That is, go to youtube.com/IllinoisChannelTV if you've already watched the show and you liked it, and you liked what Illinois Channel and Public Affairs are bringing to you. We'll like it because it'll be easier to bring you more of that. Give us your comments. We want to know. It's awful. Did I do something wrong? Yes. Don't hold back. Don't sugarcoat it.
Well, say nice things about me.
Well, say a nice thing about Richard Porter. You
There
can
you go.
dump on me, okay? Because we want to know. We want your comments. This is a democracy. It's important that you tell us how we're doing, and so that's good. All is good, and thank you so much for the time. You've
Thanks
been
for having me.
great.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
You got some deliberation to do,
Yes.
and do it, and come back and let us know what you've done.
Well, thank you for
Don't be a
having me on.
stranger.
I won't be.
I don't want to wait
No.
another 30 years to,
I
20
know.
years to get
I
you on
know.
the show.
I know. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate
Richard
it.
Porter, possible candidate for governor in March, in the Republican primary in March of 2022.
We'll see.
Thanks so much, Richard.
Okay, thanks a lot.